rapid forces was so powerful that people equivocated to a whole country. So we literally woke up to jets flying over us, um, bombs everywhere, and I'm sure you heard some of the stories back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, and now that's what brought us to this.
Okay, you mentioned the UAE. Can you go into like slight details? How would you describe the UAE's involvement in this? That's very apparent, and the role in the Sudan conflict. Is this something that became aggressive as it went on, or is it something that they were funding the whole time?
Okay, so Hemeti's relationship, or the leader of the Rapid Support Forces with the UAE, was very early on. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and when I say UAE's involvement, I think it is better to rephrase it as the sole reason. The sole reason this is happening is because of the UAE. They are the sole culprit of how things got this bad. Their relationship started before the war when Mansour bin Zayed. Mansour bin Zayed is Mohammed bin Zayed's younger brother.
Mm-hmm.
In 2020, he introduced Hemeti to drone technology. That's where their relationship really heightened, as well as the war in Yemen. In Yemen, there were Sudani troops at a very high caliber. That's where the relationship with the Rapid Support Forces and the UAE regime as a whole became very, very strong between the two. So obviously, back then, the military did not just sit and allow the UAE to fund or strengthen Hemeti. It was very gradual.
Mm-hmm.
But if we would speak about the war specifically, their surprise attack on the people, the UAE is the culprit of everything. The commands, the orders, when to fight, what areas to take, when to take them, they're all done by the UAE. Hemeti actually is but a mere tool. That's why whenever we come out, we say that we're not against, or our main enemy is the UAE. We're fighting against the UAE. Hemeti is but a mere tool for the UAE. And if you look at all the countries in the region, yani, this is not the first time we hear about the UAE using or trying to divide the country. You know what happened in Yemen, in
Yeah.
Syria, in Libya, yeah, so on and
Correct.
so forth. So I wouldn't say it's an involvement. They're the sole reason this is happening.
Okay, so with Yemen, we can see that obviously it's the fight over the Red Sea, and it's a strategic move, right, to control that region. But with Sudan, the UAE, what is its gain from Sudan in general? Is it just more of uh, essentially just changing the culture of Sudan, uh, where people say Arabization, or is it something deeper than that, where it leads to its resources and natural minerals, or is it just a cultural? It wants a cultural influence of Sudan.
So you actually said it. A lot of people think that resources or Port Sudan, we all know UAE wants all the ports in a specific manner from Bab el Mandab all the way to Port Sudan. But the main reason, you said it yourself, Sudan is a very, yani Islam is, I can easily say it's 90% or 95% of us are Muslims. This is the main issue of why this is happening in Sudan. Sudan has been pro-Palestinian regime-wise and culturally. We're very the our culture in itself is a big issue towards the UAE's plan to the Horn of Africa. 97%, yes, 97% of Sudan are Muslims. Now, if you would allow me, I just want to play a 20-second uh, video. It's not. It's an audio. It explains the route in a very simple way why the UAE is doing what they're doing. And I need people to understand, yes, resources are involved, but to them, resources are just a bonus. And this bonus has been incentivized to them by the main country behind all of this, which is Israel. But we can talk about that in a second. But yeah, just have a listen.
In Sudan, to put it in very simple terms, the aim of the war in Sudan that is led by Hemeti, backed by the UAE, and with which Washington enjoys great sympathy for, is a bid to reconstruct the army in Sudan in order to impose ideological changes to the state. By ideological changes to state, what I mean is removing Islam from the constitution, normalizing ties with Israel, re-establishing the riba system, the interest-based economic system in Sudan itself, and to make Sudan much more pliant than it's been in the past. And Hemeti is now fighting a war by proxy on behalf of the UAE and Washington in order to try to reconstruct the Sudanese army. That's in simple terms.
So just like you heard, this is the main reason they're trying to reconstruct the Sudanese mentality. It being by bringing interest, riba, or the opening bars in Sudan. Basically, that whole new world order that they're trying to implement in Muslim countries.
Okay, so for someone, let's just say that lives in the UAE, there's a lot of Muslims, even with a lot of the viewers right now are Somali, right? And a lot of them live in the UAE. If someone says, well, the UAE is they're Muslims, what do they gain changing Islam into that? Why would they do that? Or are they being influenced by something outside of the UAE itself?
Now, to understand that question, I think you need to know the UAE's existence, or how did it get so diplomatically powerful. UAE is the biggest advocate of Israel. They started the Abraham Accords. Basically, the UAE's role in the Middle East, to Washington and all these Western countries, is that the UAE is our strongest arm in the Middle East after Israel. As we all know, they're the ones who brought up the Abraham Accords. They're the ones who started all of the tatbiya, as we call it in Arabic. Tamam? Now, the UAE in itself, we refer to it as dawla wadhifiyya. Dawla wadhifiyya means that it's like a puppet state. And I know this is, if anyone here is in the UAE, I hope you guys are safe, because they have a very strong policing there. But yeah, as I said, they're a country that follows a certain command. To them, Israel says do, they do that. That's the whole point of what they're doing. Dawla wadhifiyya, they're just following an order, per se. So to them, if it was about resources, akhi, let's say resources. Before this whole war started, the UAE was the biggest country, or the second biggest country with gold reserves, without a single gold mine. And if you look at Sudan, gold is a big factor. And most of our gold was smuggled to the UAE before all this war broke out. And the area in Sudan called Al-Fashaga, we already had with them deals that would allow them to benefit even more than we would benefit.
Sorry.
And if I would just take you back to a small historical fact, by the way, and my Sudanese brother here can substantiate this, Sudan was the country that built the UAE. The UAE is a country that came up in the 1970s. The first Muslim Arabic-speaking president that entered the UAE when they were united was Ja'far Nimeri, a Sudanese president. And the Sheikh Zayed, their leader back then, there's a famous saying that everyone in Sudan knows, told the president of Sudan back then, Ja'far Nimeri, he said, I want Abu Dhabi to be like Khartoum, our capital city. Our engineers, we built their country literally from not only engineers, but actually like doctors. So people from all varieties helped the UAE. So this is just one ironic part, about.
So what you're saying is essentially that the UAE and Sudan were already in collaboration with each other, government-wise, when it comes to resources. They were smuggling the resources already. So then it's more of the influence. Can you explain? Some people do not know what the Abraham Accords is. What it is, as quick as you can sum it up, and what Sudan strategically plays into the Abrahamic Accords.
Absolutely. So the Abraham Accords is basically an agreement normalizing ties with Israel. That's what it is. As much as they sugarcoat it, It's a country saying that we are all right with you, or we identify you, Israel, to have the right to exist in that location. Tamam? Normalizing them. And in other words, saying, Israel, after everything you've done to our brothers and sisters in Palestine, we still recognize your existence. We recognize your annexation of this land. This is what the Abraham Accord is. Tamam? Sudan. Geographically, Sudan is very important for Israel for two reasons. Number one, Greater Israel. There is an idea within the cabinet in Israel that if you would see the IDF soldiers, they have a certain map in their uniform. This map is of Greater Israel. Now, it doesn't necessarily include Sudan, but it does include a part of Egypt and many parts of Africa as well. For that plan to happen smoothly, Sudan needs to be a nation that is completely against Islam, a nation that has no say or sovereignty whatsoever. That's the first thing. The second thing on why they need Sudan is because the geographical location of Sudan is very significant to them. From Port Sudan, having direct access to the Red Sea, through Sudan, you can go, it's very easy to go through 10 countries in Africa. Very easy for them. And Sudan not being a sovereign nation, it makes it that much easier for them to tighten the tie against Egypt, a country that inevitably they will have to go to war against. As concise as I can be, yeah.
Correct. So you know how when proxy wars, where you have the UAE funding the RSF, is there any country that is funding the other side? You know how, for example, like Syria, you had the Free Syrian Army, where some of them, at first it was two different. One ended up turning into Daesh, but one side was being funded by Turkey, the other side being funded by America, and some being funded by Russia, pro Bashar al-Assad. So in Sudan, are we seeing that where it is turning into several different countries that are backing different factions? And then other than the UAE, is there other countries that are backing other factions within Sudan?
Okay, so I just want to make one thing clear. As a sovereign country, as Sudan, as a military, I have every right to buy arms.
Sorry.
When as Sudan, yes, as Sudanese army, we do have our sources. Of course, we don't make our own pew-pews, right? But as a sovereign nation, as a country of sovereignty and an army that's been there for more than 100 years, it's the backbone of our country. We have every right to have arm deals with any country that we see fit, and here's why. When you ask in the notion of two factions, they have their funders and we have our funders, just highlight one thing. Until this day today, the UAE completely denies any involvement whatsoever. They will never come out and say, yes, we arm the RSF. Every pew-pew, every single one has been off record. However, when I get my pew-pews, it's in front of the UN Assembly. I go through all the protocols of every single pew-pew that comes into my country. Why? Because I have nothing to hide. I'm a nation of sovereignty, and I follow the protocol as per a country that is going through a war like it's going through right now. So when you compare it, really, people need to understand that I'm fighting a militia. So the fact that they need to go underneath the table and create shady deals with companies in America like BlackRock or other companies in the UAE, whichever they may be, they have to do their bidding underneath the table for a reason. I hope that answers the question.
No, it does answer. And I do see a lot of companies on here. It says Raytheon, Emirates, that's with UAE, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Militech, Edge Group. So there is several countries and numerous different companies that are funding the RSF. And like you said, as a sovereign country, obviously you will use your own resources as well. Now,
but can I also just I'm sorry, just one thing, because you told me how many other countries are involved. If you would focus only on the UAE, it's easier. because the UAE is the sole, like, if there's any, let's say Chad is also heavily involved. If it wasn't for the UAE, Chad would have never been involved. This applies to all the other countries involved. But go on.
So, okay. I wanted to ask. You said that the UAE denies completely its involvement, right? So, when a country like that is pretty much watching its PR, and it wants its hands clean, can you explain to us how the weapons are getting to Sudan? If that's something that you do have any knowledge on, any collaborators within East Africa that are helping to get these weapons into Sudan, so the UAE can keep their hands clean.
Yeah, absolutely. So, unfortunately, they're really using sister countries to us, and that's one of the best ways they've been able to utilize their influence in the Horn of Africa or in East Africa generally. But just to mention a few, because we have 17 countries involved, either logistically or through being a border country that allows arms to be coming in. The biggest one right now to mention is Libya through Haftar. The Libyans, they have invaded an area in Sudan that is a border triangle between Sudan, Egypt, and Libya. Through that area, and through an airport called Kufra Airport, they have been able to supply heavy arms, especially in the last attack on Al-Fashir, through that area. We have mercenaries and arms coming from Chad. Now, Chad is one of the biggest instigators, or the ones helping the UAE in what they're doing, because they're a border country, and the border in itself, it's not that we hate Chadians, but for the UAE, it was just too befitting. The borders between us, it is very large in size, meaning that it would increase how easy it is for them to send arms and mercenaries. Unfortunately, we do have from Somalia as well. We have from Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso. These are the mercenaries from where, but the airports used are from Chad, in Jamena and Jaras. These are the two airports. We have in Libya, the Kufra airport, and in Somalia, the one in Puntland, the Bosaso, if I am pronouncing that correctly. But these are the three main airports they use.
Okay, so when it comes to the in the Somali one, again, majority of the viewers being Somali, within Sudan, whether it's journalists or the government itself in Sudan, that's pro the Sudani people, is there any documentations or anything that's actually showing that link where they are using Bosaso, the airport, or anything of that, where you saying that it is coming in from Bosaso?
Yeah, absolutely. But before I get into that, to every Somali brother and sister here, by no means, if you ask any Sudani, especially Somalis, by the way, we have no problems with the people at all. We actually rarely even bring it up unless we're asked about it, because of how much the relationship between the two people are. If you go everywhere around the world, the closest people, or one of